Welcome to the Indian Gaming Association's The New Normal webcast. My name is Lisa Johnson. I'm the conference manager for the Indian Gaming Trade Show and Convention. I'd like to share a few housekeeping tips before we get started. Everyone is muted by default except for our speakers. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Victor Rocha, conference chairman of the Indian Gaming Association.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the New Normal, your go-to source for discussions on the gaming industry and key issues for tribes. I'm Victor Rocha, conference chairman of the Indian Gaming Association, joined by my co-host Jason Giles, executive director of the Indian Gaming Association. Today, Jason and I are joined by Amanda Fisher, the policy director and COO of Better Markets, and our dear friend Scott Crowell. Scott, welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. And this is a different one for us. Amanda is just going to be talking. She didn't want to do her sorry.
Zoom camera.
Yeah, she didn't want to do the Zoom camera. She's getting ready to have a baby, and so we're fine with that. We're just honored to have you, Amanda. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. This is such an important topic that I am excited to talk about.
As I told the guys, as I told Jason, I discovered you on Twitter, and I saw your voice and started reading, I was like, oh my gosh, here's somebody that actually knows about what's going on. And, I reached out. I thought it was important that, we have your voice for the tribes and for gaming and stuff like that, who are also fighting this fight against prediction markets. And I saw that we had an ally. And even though we had never met, I reached out to you and asked you to join us, and you did. Fortunately, great timing on our part, because then we had that CFTC hearing last week, and you submitted your written testimony, and you were kind enough to send it to me, and I sent it to Jason, and we read it, and we were all just knocked out. And by the way, Lisa will be sharing this document with everyone. We have it on PDF. And we were all pretty much knocked out by it. You said what we were all thinking and what we, intuitively knew, but you laid it down in a very concise way, right, Jason?
Well, Victor, Amanda, the best thing about this, I mean, it's so incredibly well researched. I mean, it reads a little bit like a legal brief with all the relevant footnotes. So, anybody can just go find the information you're stating in your testimony. And Amanda, if you don't mind, Scott, we'll start with our new guest here, because I think we can, envelop this with what she testified on last week with what's going on currently in the litigation. But Amanda, real quick, if you don't mind, we have a diverse group of folks who attend each week: tribal gaming commissioners, tribal leaders, but then also industry leaders. A lot of just commercial gaming folks are on this. And if you can start by just telling us who Better Markets are, and how did you get involved with them, and what's their role with the CFTC?
Sure thing. I so appreciate you having me on. So Better Markets is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization headquartered in Washington, D.C., and all of our staff are experts in various parts of financial markets. And the thing that's great about our organization is we really have free rein to just advocate for what we think is in the public interest, regardless of, what moneyed interest may take what positions on the issues. And Better Markets has really been one of the few organizations in Washington, D.C. that is focused on the CFTC. And that's because of the agency not having the tools it needed in the run up to 2008, and how financial derivatives exploded and exacerbated the subprime crash, but also really focusing on the CFTC to ensure that it's meeting its statutory mission, both on those financial derivatives, but also on the ag markets that allow our country to produce food and oil and precious metals, that lets the real work of manufacturers and agricultural companies hedge their risks in markets and ensure that prices reflect true supply and demand and not excess speculation. So I'll just conclude by saying Better Markets got really concerned when Kalshi started to offer election-related prediction markets back last year. We supported the previous CFTC in trying to litigate and shut that down. We predicted that these contracts would spread into other markets, including sports. And unfortunately, our kind of worst fears have become realized in the last year or so. So we are really focused on building relationships everywhere we can to educate policymakers in the media about why this is bad for consumers, why this is bad for states and tribes, why it's actually bad for the financial system, and how it's going to distract the CFTC from their core mission and perhaps contribute to another financial crisis.
Scott, you're much more well-read than either I or Victor, but I'm going to state something, and I want Amanda to compare these two things. But in her testimony, she points out, and this is that famous quote of something that started out as tragedy and ended up just being farce. In the late 90s, they saw the subprime mortgage lending out of control and massive speculation. And the CFTC chair at the time said, hey, we need to get a control. This is a derivative. It's being used in new ways. We're the agency that, that is in charge of the derivatives and this whole commodities futures trading, of course. And they went to Congress. And what did Congress do? They passed a 6-month moratorium on not allowing the CFTC to regulate these new more derivatives. And now here we are with a new, these so-called prediction markets. It's really just illegal gambling in our view. And they're tying them up and putting them in a bow as a commodity, as a futures event contract. And we're desperately trying to get Congress to act. Everyone just, has their head in the ground or just walks around and says, oh, I'll look into it. Oh, I haven't heard about it before, even though 10 people have come in and told them about it. Amanda, we're in almost the same position right now where, except this time the CFTC is sort of complicit in just letting this happen. They don't even care. And you pointed that in your testimony. The only thing that's changed in a year since you mentioned Kalshi was trying to do elections is the CFTC has just thrown up their hands and said, we're not going to stop any of this. It's very frightening because now you have Wall Street and a lot of speculators pouring money into Kalshi, Polymarket, Crypto.com, including our own commander-in-chief and his businesses are now going to, partner and be in a prediction market on Truth Social. What do you think about these parallels right now?
It's very troubling, and I'll say that I worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission, kind of the CFTC's sibling regulator, during the last administration, and we saw crypto use this playbook, which is claim that there is a lack of regulatory clarity, claim that existing rules can't possibly cover them, and that they've developed some novel technology that doesn't fit neatly within regulations, and then do the whole ask for forgiveness, not permission thing, or, and the disruptions that they're offering are not really the tech. They're not really any sort of innovation. It's regulatory arbitrage. It's breaking laws and hoping that the agencies that are tasked with enforcing those laws are too slow, too captured, too hamstrung to enforce the law as it exists. And I wrote a piece a while ago that I can circulate with this group about how this has long been the playbook of a lot of folks in the financial industry, which is claim that something's ambiguous, do it, and hope that the law enforcement can't catch you. A lot of these venture capital-backed industries or funders did it with crypto. And now that battle has largely been won when all the lawsuits at the federal level have been dismissed, they're moving into prediction markets. And it's the exact same playbook. The CFTC does have the tools to shut it down, just like they could have shut down financial derivatives or regulated them in the lead up to 2008. But we have seen so much capture, so much marketing, so much lobbying power that it's really now down to states, tribes, advocates, and the rest to enforce the law.
And Scott, surely somebody has made that argument before a court by this time, but it is a little different from the subprime mortgages in that, you're infringing on state and tribal sovereignty on something that is so clearly within their regulatory purview. What are the courts saying about this, in terms of these arguments being raised?
Well, the Kalshi, Crypto.com, Robinhood, have seized on this argument that that there's this self-certification provision to where they just simply declare I'm doing prediction markets on the Super Bowl and I self-certify that it's legal. Ironically, playing off of one of Amanda's comments, they actually tried to defend their prediction market on elections as not being gaming, which is clearly prohibited under both the CEA and the CFTC regulations, by saying, well, it's not like sports betting. And then as soon as the ink is dry on the decision, they self-certify for the Super Bowl and then March Madness. And now, virtually every sports betting product that you would find on your typical regulated mobile sports wagering app. And they say that, so long as the CFTC doesn't say no to their self-certification, that they have the green light to do it and that it preempts federal and state law. They got a couple of quick victories out of district courts in Nevada and New Jersey. And after those victories, the industry is just exploded, to where, even if they were shut down tomorrow, they would probably look back and say, well, this is the most brilliant move they ever made because they've got, hundreds of millions of dollars in profit that they, can go on and do other things. But it continues to grow. A frustration that I've had, and I think we've talked about, hopefully that tide is turning. The district court judge in Nevada said, I got it wrong. The New Jersey decision is on appeal. So now the only real court victory where the state regulators are enjoined from enforcing state law is in New Jersey and not anywhere else. But we can't rely on become complacent because a judge in Nevada said, yeah, I got it wrong. But my frustration with all the litigation to date is that it's between the state regulators and primarily between the state regulators and the operators. And what I really appreciate about the bright sunshine that Amanda's testimony is putting on the CFTC itself is that none of the litigation is involving the CFTC. It's they're asleep at the switch. The only reason that we're in this mess is because they're not doing their job. But to your point, I don't think because the litigation has not been directly against the CFTC itself, the courts really aren't addressing, the improper action and inaction that's occurring within that agency. We were contemplating, and I know some states are contemplating more affirmative litigation against the CFTC itself, but it's the real wrongdoer here. And I appreciate Amanda's testimony because it brings light to that fact.
And Amanda, I'm not going to, our audience, we've had a heck of a time explaining to folks in our arena, tribal gaming, tribal leadership, tribal governments, what the heck the CFTC even is, what do they do? But one thing, Amanda, not to get too far down in the weeds, but you state in here, the commission is responsible for curbing financial speculation unrelated to natural supply and demand forces. And the commission enacted a position limits rule in 2021 that would sort of police that supply and demand and make sure it's related to something real in the economy. So what you stated there, how would that look if you applied that to a prediction market? I mean, our Victor and I's whole issue with this is, what is the value of this thing? Like, it's a bunch of nonsense when you go on their sites and you read about, will Taylor Swift be pregnant, in 6 months, or, will this hurricane strike land? And that, the only place they are making any money is sports betting, and they openly admit, 80% plus of what they're doing is bets on sports. How does the CFTC and they never publicly release those position limits, if I read your testimony right? So that's another issue. But how would that apply to something like these prediction markets and so-called futures contracts?
Look, even if the CFTC were committed to appropriately regulating prediction markets, it's just not fit for purpose. They don't, the statutory tools that they have, the staff that they have, the understanding of gambling markets, the ability to impose age limits or other consumer protections, it's just unfit for purpose. It's a round peg, square hole. The CFTC and the self-certification framework that Congress created was designed so that agricultural interests could get quick approval for a new corn futures contract or cotton futures contract because farmers needed to hedge the risk of a drought or a poor harvest season. Or, airlines needed to hedge the risk of oil price movements. And in that case, the contracts aren't that exotic. We're not talking about retail people getting involved in these markets. It's just, it was kind of a very important but plain vanilla asset class. But now that they are doing all of it, trying to fit all these prediction market contracts into this framework, the self-certification regime becomes like an easy pass lane to get anything past the goalies, even if they wanted to stop them. So you're asking me like what a same game parlay for a Bills game and it has to do with position limits? I couldn't tell you because it's not designed for that. The tools that gambling regulators have are designed for different things. And also, like, I should say that, there are certain prohibitions against insider trading or basically using information by virtue of your position to make outsized gains in the market. Whether it's position limits or other tools, so that people can't like corner the aluminum market and jack up prices through manipulation. But the CFTC has zero tools to detect if an NBA player is deliberately missing free throws to juice a prediction market contract. They have no idea if CEOs are manipulating the words that they say on earnings calls to juice prediction market contracts. There are so many contracts offered on so many things. The CFTC could not in any world monitor every single college basketball game to look at these things. It is just, they have trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of other markets that they need to be looking at that have a very important role in Americans' lives. And it would just be, the tools they have are not fit for purpose. The staff they have is not fit for purpose. And also it's just so outside of their wheelhouse.
And Amanda, you talk about their purpose, and the CFTC was created to help the American farmers, and the American farmer right now are in crisis mode with the tariffs, with the lack of sales in Iowa. The suicide rate has gone up, the bankruptcy has gone up, yet we're not hearing anything from them. What happened?
I mean, it's a great question. The CFTC, so through the years, the agency is 50 years old and it grew out of, laws that go back to the 1860s in grain markets. And there have been scandals over time where people try to corner the market, or if you've seen Trading Places use illicit information about the
Mortimer and
orange
Orville.
juice market.
Mortimer.
Exactly. So That's what it's designed to do right now. We have very volatile ag markets. The cattle futures market, for example, goes crazy every time President Trump announces that, oh, we're going to do Argentinian beef imports. No, we're not. And they don't control the price of beef, but they ensure that, for example, people aren't insider trading on tariff news in the futures market or manipulating the price such that beef reflects speculation instead of like the actual supply and demand price of beef. So, yes, and to be clear, like the ag industry is very upset with the CFTC. They feel very caught between a rock and a hard place because of all of the president's business entanglements with these companies. But if you go back even as recently as COVID-19, when we were also facing a very volatile time for ag markets, there were letters to the CFTC saying, can you look at this market? Can you take action? Can you develop a task force? And the CFTC, like 5 years ago, before all of these prediction market interests came to DC, was very responsive. They did. They held roundtables with agricultural producers. They studied the pandemic and what it was doing to ag markets. That's what they should be doing right now instead of a world tour to talk to various like crypto VC entrepreneurs about sports gambling.
And
Right.
Scott, I'm so glad you're on here to sort of interpose what Amanda's saying with some of what we've seen in the courts. Now, we like you mentioned the Nevada District Court judge who, sort of blasted these guys and said, you guys are this can't be the first time in history that somebody, that the geniuses he really directed fire at them, that geniuses figured out how to get around a regulatory loophole. But given what Amanda said, and I'm sure these arguments are being made to the judges, why should we be worried about the New Jersey case that's on appeal? Like what happened in those arguments at the appellate level, where some of this stuff should have already been fleshed out?
Well, you're right to be concerned about that. The oral those two cases came right out of the box, and I think caught everybody off guard. The Nevada and New Jersey cases, and Kalshi won in both cases, enjoining the state regulators from enforcing their gaming laws, and to Amanda's point, from enforcing the responsible regulatory infrastructure that comes with it to make sure that the actors are suitable and properly licensed, that internal controls are in place, that age protection and issues of problem gambling, and making sure that the product that's being offered is fair and honest to the consumer. Nevada and New Jersey historically have had the most robust regulatory systems in place in terms of dealing with those issues. And as gaming has expanded across the country, states have developed that infrastructure, and through the requirements of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act and compacts, et cetera, and NIGC regulations, tribes have developed that responsible infrastructure as well. You're talking about thousands of individuals that spend their entire lives and their entire careers making sure that this product is fair and honest. There's nothing within the wherewithal and capabilities and structure of the CFTC to replace or supplant that responsible regulatory oversight. And in fact, to Amanda's point, there's lots of great people there that are there because they care about the agricultural industry and what the CEA was intended to regulate. But to my point earlier, the courts really haven't focused on that aspect so far. Both the New Jersey and Nevada District Court seized on this argument that Kalshi put forward that said, Well, Congress intended to preempt the field of prediction markets, and it's up to the CFTC to say no to these gaming contracts. And if they don't say no, well, then there's nothing to prevent them to continue to operate without any regard or compliance with the state laws and regulations in place. And thankfully, the judge in Nevada has seen the error of his ways, but I listened to the oral argument of the appeal of the New Jersey decision, and it did not go well. Now, hopefully, it was early on. A lot of these, more recent decisions that out of Maryland and out of Massachusetts that push back against this theory, will cause a different result. But I'm very concerned that the appeals court is going to affirm that injunction against the New Jersey regulators. And I mean, this last decision out of the judge in Nevada, I felt was the most intelligent one, where it just basically, says, this really comes down to calcium, to your point of how do these geniuses come up with these ways to circumvent it. They get into the weeds and argue, all these, well, this is a swap and this is a prediction market and we're self-certifying. And the judge said, no, wait a minute. What you're really asking me to do is to believe that when Congress amended the Commodities Exchange Act, that they intended to completely circumvent and essentially render toothless and moot, this robust national system of regulation of gaming activities that's broken down to a product of 50 states and hundreds of tribes, and the way that they've decided to identify what their public policy is going to be towards gaming, and to make sure that if they allow gaming, it's done responsibly. And the CFTC's has the capacity to shut this all down, and we're all here because they all those points I've made about what the CFTC isn't are all the more reason that the CFTC first adopted a regulation that says prediction market contracts on gaming are against the public interest. And I think most prior administrations, maybe even the prior Trump administration, would say this is a bridge too far. But unfortunately, it's not really robustly discussed in the current litigation because the CFTC is not a party. I think they need to be.
And Amanda, one of the things that caught us really off guard amongst all the other things dealing with agriculture and CFTC, which we have no experience on. We're all gaming regulators, gaming lobbyists. But Amanda, at the first hearing for Brian Quintenz, who ultimately did not get the chairmanship, the aspect of crypto just floored us. Like 90% of that hearing was about crypto. And then it's kind of Victor started putting it together. He collects a lot of these articles and everything. But Amanda, what is the connection with crypto and prediction markets? We just feel like it's an even more opaque way to lure in gamblers and whoever else, and you won't have any kind of trail or anything with who's doing this, how old they are, all those concerns. And crypto just makes all those things even scarier. And you point out this in your testimony. Where is all this crypto stuff coming from?
It is so, I live and work in Washington, D.C., and I have for a while. The way that money has infiltrated the congressional discussion over this issue is just one of the most staggering things I've seen. Even I worked on Capitol Hill for a dozen years and have never seen something of this scale and influence. And the American people are not clamoring for this. If you do polls of what issues voters care about, they don't care about crypto. And if they know about crypto, they generally think it's a scam. So it's a very small minority of people that have a ton of money at stake. And a lot of the venture capital funds that funded these big crypto projects are the same funds that have now pivoted to prediction markets. And rather than investing in new technology, R&D, industries to make healthcare better or energy better, they're dumping a ton of money into where do we think the fragilities are in our legal and democratic framework, and how do we exploit them to make a quick buck? So all of the innovation is around legal innovation, and they hire up some of the most expensive, best law firms in Washington, D.C. and across the country. They flood the zone with lobbyists. They are very, very explicit that if you do not vote for them, they will dump money on your opponent. And they are decent at muddying the waters such that they want to create uncertainty that time-tested laws apply to them. So, the fact that either if it's Quinten's or Selig, the hearing was dominated by crypto, it is very concerning to me because there's so much else going on at the CFTC, but also it's not surprising to me. I mean, I don't know how much your folks have followed this, but the Winklevoss twins were able to tank the nomination of the first Trump.
We're eating it.
Yeah.
We're on top
I
of
mean,
this.
just through some tweets and some texts, and also it can't be ignored that so many people in the administration have a lot of money on the line with these prediction markets, and it's because it's an easy way to make money. You have decided that you don't have to comply with the laws. The only thing you need to pay for is your legal fees.
Well,
And you have an administration. Yeah.
You mentioned arbitrage, and that's a word that I use all the time because that's what it feels like. You know what I mean? It's like they know it's short term. It's, get in, the investment from ICE, the owners of the SEC, and that $2 billion in the poly market. That tells me, okay, these guys are getting in early. They want to get their money at multiples, and that's what this is all about. These guys know this thing is short term, and that, if we don't push back, it will be long term. You know what I mean? So
It's absolutely right. And honestly, where I think that they're going to go next, and why I've been trying to educate more people in the traditional financial services industry, is that all of a sudden, mark my words, you're going to start seeing prediction market contracts on whether or not the price of a stock or a bond goes up or down.
Right.
That
Well,
is,
listen, yeah, you saw
that is regulated activity. They're going to try to get out from under like investor protection laws at the SEC to reclassify anything that they can as a prediction market contract.
And that was that interview that Tariq Mansour had the other day about, everything can be a bet. You can bet on anything, everything in society. And it was just a real despicable version of the future, very dystopian type of, horrible. These are not good human beings. I'm sorry, but their future of the world is not a humanist approach. It's really just about commoditizing everything. Excuse my language, commoditizing everything and making a buck on everything. Like you said, like stock markets going up, children falling in the street, softball games, elementary school games. Everything is a bet. You know.
Well, and Scott, why do you think that the CFTC itself hasn't been no one's filed a lawsuit against them yet? Do we not have a good fact pattern yet? There's been a couple class action suits, one that was certified in Southern District of New York, and I think another one was filed in Massachusetts. Is that where it might come up eventually? Some of these class action suits?
Hit my mute button. The class action suits are also against the operators, not against the CFTC. Um, and in Amanda's answer to the last question, I think is one explanation as to why um, that lawsuit's not been filed yet. It's unfortunately, we are living in an age of of vengeance and retribution, and there's so much you know money associated with the White House that is in this space that I think that it's created um, a chilling effect in a number of environments, not just in motivation to bring a lawsuit, the but also for actors in various federal agencies, to do their job, despite uh, you what they do might be looked upon uh, with a frown by folks in the political side of the arena, and anybody that's going to bring this on, is certainly the Kalshis and crypto.coms of the world are going to intervene and pile on with and make the litigation to be extraordinarily expensive. Uh, on the other side of it, from the legal objective side of it, uh, the way this situation is created makes it difficult. In order to challenge uh, uh, the action of a federal agency, you need to seize upon a final agency action. And when they've created a structure that basically allows uh, the uh, the regulated to become the regulator by self-certifying their compliance with CFTC laws and regulations, there's no clear final agency action to seize upon. So, do we have a viable claim against the CFTC under the APA when they have not taken any action? Now, there's some case law that says at some point, inaction, is action. I think it's Voltaire that said, there's a certain inevitability to inaction uh, or indecision, and I think that's what's going on here. But minds smarter than mine are taking a look at this. We are now having more discussions with people that been involved in the with CFTC matters specifically, that have the experience and knowledge base necessary to look at this. We think that there are ways to get around these potential legal standing problems that avoid getting to the merits. And you have to look at the right vehicle too. It's the one of the issues that I'm very glad to see the class action lawsuits filed. But when you're making that wager on your Kalshi site, you're not looking at the fine print of the agreement that you're binding yourself to make that wager, that precludes pursuing class actions and provides for all sorts of avenues to allow them to say, court, you don't have jurisdiction, or these plaintiffs don't have standing, and we're going to see, that litigation get bogged down, by those types of defenses. Um, my hope is that, I mean, your point earlier, we've all been caught off guard. A year ago, the words CFTC or Commodities Future Trading Commission or prediction market, weren't anywhere in my brain or flowing off of my tongue. All this is happening so quickly, but I think as brighter minds take a look at this and the bright light of day is shown upon this, it's becoming clearer and clearer that this is just at its core illegal activity, and the agencies and the federal government that have the ability to take action of it, the CFTC, the NIGC, the Department of Justice, need to step up, and tribal attorneys and state AGs, need to weigh in on the discussion so that we can bring this illegal activity to a cessation.
And Amanda, to go back to you, what have you heard since you've given this testimony and given it to the House Ag? What are the next steps for better markets? And God bless you. You're got more important things in your life right now than worrying about this kind of nonsense. But what are you hearing? Because from the enforcement aspect, which you touch on in here, they have especially Carolyn Pham. She's just thrown up her hands. But partly we know if she did take any customer complaints or really delve into what Kalshi and try to slow it down or stop it, she'd probably be fired the next day. Instead, she's doing the CEO Innovation Council, which is going to help, propel, she claims, the CFTC into the future. And, and then it's just a who's who of, crypto people and prediction market people that are going to be on this council. What are you hearing back, Amanda, if anything, from Congress? And then where's Better Markets looking to go take this fight next?
So I'll do the glass half empty and then the glass half full. The glass half empty is that these individuals seem to control the federal agency apparatus, and just look at the membership of the CEO Council. It's all crypto and prediction market executives. And there's even a law that says that these federal advisory committees need to be balanced. Somebody from the IGA or AGA should be on that according to the law, but they were not. And also I should say there are even senators and members of the House that when the last time the CEA was opened in 2010, there are speeches that they gave on the House floor saying, we are amending this event contract, the section of the law that relates to event contracts. But to be clear, we do not want this to open the door to Super Bowl betting or betting on the Masters tournament. But glass half empty, I mean, a lot of those policymakers are now on the payroll of some of these prediction market platforms and are now going around writing op-eds saying, well, we didn't mean it in 2010. So that's the bad news. The good news is this. We could not get any elected officials or staff to care about this at all, during the Biden presidency when Kalshi was starting to encroach. The amount of coverage that this is getting in the media, the awareness of this issue, it's exploding. And, I worked for Senator Cortez Masto of Nevada, and it took a long time to educate up her staff, but she did send that letter to the CFTC. And there's now, particularly with the encroachment into sports betting, they're starting to recognize this. So if I had suggestions for anyone, it would be explain to policymakers the harm caused here and educate them about the lost tax revenue. Some of these prediction market platforms are bragging to their customers that they don't have to abide by the federal 90% gambling loss deduction. They're like bragging about this.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
So explain the loss of tax revenue to the states, like engage policymakers to, I know some of the leagues have been bought, but the leagues are still powerful on Capitol Hill. Other organizations that fight to, you know, have safe legal gambling can be leveraged. I think the traditional financial services industry is starting to get more and more uncomfortable about this because they're seeing how traditional financial products, whether it's insurance or options, can sort of be manipulated to fit in this prediction market box. So I saw the banking organizations today just formed a pact to counter the influence of crypto. And then the last thing I would say, and this is really important, there is moving legislation in the Senate related to crypto, and it reopens the CEA for the first time in 15 years. Something is going to pass, and a lot of the crypto provisions are separately bad, and they introduce a lot of new bad practices. But I'm sure Scott could get into it too, but it would take all of 3 sentences to shut this down. And, it's going to be a huge battle, but crypto is not going to come away from this empty-handed. They want something. And I think for some of the particularly Democratic members of Congress that want to vote for something to amend the CEA on crypto, it is a fair price of admission to ask them to address this prediction market issue, particularly if it's just related to sports. So happy to keep that conversation going, but it would be a complete waste if Congress went to the hard work of reopening the Commodity Exchange Act and did not address this issue through legislation.
Right. And, Amanda, that is something we just talked about yesterday. We know they're going to try to mark up that called the Clarity Act, crypto bill in the Senate Banking Committee, maybe this week, but first week of January, and they want to try to get it passed. And we are going to, like you said, we actually have proposed legislation to amend the CEA. It's less than 3 sentences, and it does just address, sports betting and gambling. And I like that you pointed out also, hey, stock traders, stockbrokers, you're next on the lunch list because people won't need to go short a stock and disclose all this, information. They can just go on these prediction markets and short a stock. So, thanks for pointing that out. Victor, any questions today that are,
Yeah, Amanda, one of the examples of the ridiculousness of these conversations from their side was I noticed you and I were commenting on social media today when the owner or of Robinhood was talking about you don't need insurance anymore and you can just do it on prediction markets. What was he talking about there? What was he saying? Just to humor.
I mean, it's
it was
hard
ridiculous,
to know if
right? You saw
it was ridiculous, and it's hard. Yeah, it's just look. I mean, I worked in Congress after several major natural disasters, including like a Hurricane Katrina. The idea that you could just take out a binary option on will my house be destroyed by a flood or not is frankly insulting to people who have lived through a natural disaster. Everyone knows that the claims process is not some binary option that some, platform can decide on an individual basis. There is litigation that lasts years over whether or not it was wind damage or flood damage that caused your house to collapse. Like this is a highly regulated market at the state level. And I think insurance regulators should get involved in this too, to tell people that you can just take out a bet on Robinhood and protect yourself from a fire when it's like, it just boggles the mind. And it also shows like a real arrogance and ignorance of very complicated state laws that are very important to protecting people in their worst time of need. So the scary part is I think that they're serious about this. I think that they actually think that this could work. And
you know what?
just,
I don't think they're serious. I think they're just throwing anything at the wall. They don't believe that at all. You know what I mean? They're just like making stuff up,
Fair enough. I mean, fair enough. But like the idea that you could replace home insurance with like some Robinhood contract is just
Well, Amanda. First of all, everyone, we put her testimony in the chat. I want to make sure everybody downloads that, and also I highly recommend following her on social media, especially on X at Amanda L Fisher, Fischer, on X, Twitter, however you're calling it nowadays. She's actually really smart and really brilliant. And when I saw her and I discovered her, I was like, oh my gosh, we got to get her on the webinar. And Amanda, we're your new allies. You know what I mean? We need to continue these conversations. We need to start working together. We have a lot that we can do together, and that's we're looking for allies that are helping us understand these issues, like you and better markets.
If I might
Thanks
wait
so much.
on that last comment, that Robinhood is saying, hey, don't buy insurance. Come to Robinhood and make a prediction market contract instead. Um, I believe they're very serious. I mean, I don't, and it goes to the point. I mean, if I were Gallup or Real Clear Politics or any of the major polling companies, I'd be concerned because, already in the election market space, they're trying to position themselves to be, the go-to predictor of what the outcome of elections are going to be. There is not a market that they don't think that they could supplant with their prediction market theories. As Jason pointed out, if you're a broker with a major firm with the stock exchange, don't think that prediction markets are looking to replace you with their product. And to bring it back to the tribes and tribal gaming, this isn't just about sports betting. As soon as the market was dry on betting on elections, they got into the sports betting market. But their theory that they could reduce the whole universe down to X's and O's or ones and zeros in some type of binary equation. There isn't a product that they couldn't offer in their prediction market space, including slot machine gaming, craps, roulettes, traditional casino games. This isn't just about sports betting. This is about them dominating and replacing the regulated gaming market with their unregulated prediction market products.
Right, Scott. And Amanda, we're definitely going to keep in touch with better markets. Scott's working with the lawyers on the amicus briefs. Certainly early part of next year is going to be huge, and we want you to have baby safe and sound and spend good time with the baby. So if there's folks at better markets that are going to be not have their hands full like you, we'll reach out to everybody we can, because we really need all sorts of allies on this. And but Amanda, what is like you said, that these guys will, just to wrap up this point, because this is really what we try to drive home to Indian country and tribal leaders, folks that haven't worked in DC. These congressional offices have their head in the sand, like ostriches, and you can tell them 3 or 4 times. It's like something I've never seen before. Is that just purely the fear of getting primaried or not going against the Trump family? Where does all that come from?
Oh, that's a long question. I think, look,
Okay.
I think with the right advocacy and engagement, you can get them to care about it. It's just going to take a lot, particularly given just the onslaught from the other side. I would suggest, to the extent that you have tribal members here that are connected to their local elected leaders, like, just have them explain directly to the offices what this could mean for sovereignty, for revenue, for consumer protection, all of those issues. The staff, you have to remember, a lot of them are 26 years old. They're overwhelmed. The staffer that follows the CFTC may also be doing labor, appropriations, national security, and five other issues. And it is really only now starting to take off. I will say that the House Agriculture Committee hearing that happened last week, the elected leaders were much more hostile towards prediction markets than I would have predicted, and that they would have even been 6 months ago. The fact that they're asking questions and kicking the tires on this is a good sign. It's unfortunate that it had to get this out of whack for them to really care. But this stuff, just keep in mind, it spread like wildfire. It started with the Super Bowl, and now all of a sudden we have parlays, we have an explosion of platforms. I think that this is actually a winnable fight. It's just going to require a lot of coalition work. And a lot of patient explaining to policymakers about what these issues are.
That's been our conclusion too, that this is a winnable fight, but you're absolutely right. And again, consider us your new allies, and let's continue exchanging information, working together closer strategy. We are a force magnifier. We are in this, we're in it to win it, but we see how this is going to end. So we have to push it. We have to keep going. We plan on stopping it. When a year ago, when we got into the fight with sweepstakes, it was the same thing. They're coming in, they see a loophole to come through it. And, one of the things that you say in your testimony is you talk about these loopholes. As they come, you shut them down, and you have to go through. And there's always new. I was thinking about this today. It reminds me of how they put an octopus in an aquarium, and they're always thinking about escaping. No matter what they do, they're escaping. It's the same thing with the CFTC. You know what I mean? These people are like figuring out some way to scam the system. No matter what you do, no matter what kind of barriers you put in. And this is a moment of, as Amanda said, of arbitrage. These things are not made to last. And like Amanda, I see the winds are starting to change. People are starting to question what this is. And because so many more stupid people that are not as smart as Kalshi and Polymarket, when you got the Jeff Ifras coming in now, you're like going, okay, now we know there's an end to this thing. When you got these kind of players coming in that are not as bright as the other ones, and it's just they're all rushing in to try to make a quick buck before it's shut down. And it's our job to shut it down. And that's exactly what we intend to do. Amanda, thank you so much. Again, people saying they can't see Amanda's testimony. You have to scroll back up to in the webinar chat. It's at the very top of it, I believe. And again, follow her on social media. She's really good. She's really got, you think I'm fun. You know what I mean? She's just much more toned. As you know, Amanda, part of what I do, it's my job to give these people a hard time and remind them that they're not the kings of the universe that they think they are. You know what I mean? And again, I think, when I read your testimony, the thing that really struck to me was that it's the American farmers that are just being neglected at all this point. You know what I mean? That these guys are forgetting what their duty was, and these people are just, it's these $2,000 or this $2 billion. This is not enough. They want their markets open. They want to get these are proud American people, farmers. Anybody that's spent any time in the Midwest knows that these people want to work for a living. They don't want handouts, and that's the thing that's really, of everything in your testimony, that's the one thing that just really struck me. Jason, wrap it up.
Scott, real quick, what's the next legislative date we should be looking at for another opinion or ruling?
Well, keep your eye on the Court of Appeals in the New Jersey case that's been fully briefed and heard. So that's probably, the next decision to come down. I believe that Joe sent to you a list of dates this morning that we have a number of amici briefs that we hope to have filed in all these lawsuits over the course of the next several weeks. We encourage, well, first, we appreciate IGA and all the regional tribal organizations that have signed on. The more tribes that sign on to it, the better. So we encourage everybody to take a look at that, and we're going to continue the discussion about potential affirmative litigation against the CFTC.
Great. Well, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Scott. This was one of the best podcasts we've had on the subject yet, and hope to have you on again. And best of luck, Amanda. New baby. We're all pulling for you, so it'll be great time here over Christmas and New Year's. Scott, we'll be in touch as usual. Victor, when are we meeting again? First week of January?
Yeah, after this, I'm talking to Rob Schwartz about from the blockchain, and I want to hear about the utility and all this stuff because it goes into a deeper issue here. I think these guys are neglecting the real purpose of what's going on for the quick buck, and there is utility here for this, but these guys don't care about it. This is about making the quick buck and getting out, but it's not sustainable and it won't last. And Amanda, consider us your new allies. Reach out to us. You and I will still keep in contact, and we'd like to have you on again. And we'd like to get someone else from Better Markets out to our conference in San Diego in April to talk about this to the tribes and stuff like that too. So Amanda, thank you so much. This was really educational.
Oh, my pleasure. This is such an important issue for us, and Better Markets really views it as a very crucial public interest matter. My email is my first initial A and my last name, Fisher, which actually has a C in it. It's FISCHER. So AFISCHER at bettermarkets.org. And I'm happy to put you in contact with my colleagues. There are a few of us that work on these issues. One of my colleagues is running point on amicus briefs, and we're trying to file in as many of the different litigations as we can manage with our small staff. But happy to continue this work with you all.
And we will continue. That's a guarantee. Oh, again, thank you, Amanda, so much. Jason, everyone, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We're going to be off for the next couple weeks to enjoy the holidays. We'll be back at the beginning of the year. And then, we leave to Barcelona over in ICE to talk about prediction markets and sweepstakes and tell our story over there also. So Amanda, we're not stopping anywhere. And everyone, follow her on social media, go on LinkedIn. She's great on Twitter. She's real fun. And Scott, thank you. And everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We'll see you guys soon. See you in
Merry
2026.
Christmas.
Bye.